This is one of my favorite weeks when we're able to talk about leadership and have the lectures on it. When we look at leadership, we've been talking about management in the last few weeks, but we're going to do a little shift and talk about leadership versus management. When we talk about leadership, we're talking about coping with change. We're also talking about establishing direction, aligning our resources, and inspiring others. With management, it's more about the complexity that goes into coping with it, dealing with it on a day in, day out basis. Also about bringing order and consistency. But when we look at leadership, it's the ability to influence a group toward the achievement of a vision or a set of goals that have been put in place. There's so many studies that have been done on this, and what we can look at are just some trait theories that are out there. We differentiate leaders from non-leaders by focusing on personal qualities and also characteristics. You guys will have an exercise that I'll have you do in a little while, and it'll work on naming leaders and what traits and qualities that they have. We do know that extroversion is related strongest to leadership, but not all leaders are extroverts. But that is, if we're looking at traits, that's going to be one of the traits that's strongest that takes you to the path of leadership. We know when you guys did the Big Five that conscientiousness and open to experience also is closely related to leadership. We do know that traits can predict leadership, that people that have certain traits will fall into that leadership category. And we know that traits are better at predicting leader emergence than leader effectiveness. So it means that you can have certain traits, and we'll talk about those, that are better at predicting leader emergence, but it doesn't mean that that leader will necessarily be effective. Excuse me, I went the wrong direction. We see there are 7 traits that seem to differ leaders from non-leaders. The first one is just ambition and energy. We know that you have to have ambition. You have to have energy to be able to lead people. As I like to say, you've just got to have the gumption and the fortitude to lead people. You also have to have the desire to lead. So it's just that innate desire that's in you that you will pick up the reins and you will be that leader for that organization. You also have to have honesty and integrity. And we can look at honesty as just being forthright, telling the truth, and then the integrity of doing the things right in every situation. You also have to have self-confidence. You have to believe in yourself. It's not always for the meek to be and go into that strong leadership type of role. Now, again, it can be people that are quiet, but they'll have the self-confidence within themselves. You also have to have intelligence. And we talked about that in earlier weeks. It doesn't have to be the smartest in the room, but it has to be the relative intelligence. And when you look on an IQ test and the STAIN-9, they will typically be not in the upper echelon, but in that mid-range, like 115 to 130 that falls on that IQ. They have to be high self-monitors. They have to be the people that have that on-off switch of where they know when they've stepped over the line. They need to know when to shut their mouth. They need to know how to walk into a room and assess the room and know what type of personality is going to work in that room and just have the political correctness. They also have to have job relevant knowledge. They don't have to always be the expert, but they have to know what's going on and can assess and know the job situation. So when we look at behavioral theories and talk about that, we assume that people can be trained to lead. And there's been a lot of research on behaviors of specific leaders. And when we look at behavior theories, it provides the basis for a design for our training programs. So we have used a lot of these behavior theories when we have put together different training programs. Perhaps one of the most comprehensive is the Ohio State studies that were done. And these were done from the 1950s to the 1970s. And it really, what it says, it developed 2 categories of leadership behavior, initiating structure and consideration. So it really said that there are two dimensions that managers fall into, and they really need to be effective, or they have to be developed in both of these areas to be effective. But initiating structure means that that's the manager or the leader that attempts to organize work relationship, and goals. But consideration is having concern for that follower's comfort, well-being, status, and satisfaction. So that's the person or the leader that acts friendly, they're supportive towards his or her subordinates. So we know, again, that to be effective as a leader or a manager, you've got to develop yourself in both of these areas, not just one. The next set of studies that was done was the University of Michigan studies, and these were conducted in the 1950s, also 1960s. And what it said is that managers were really either employee-oriented or production-oriented. So employee-oriented managers, leaders, emphasized on interpersonal relations, but production-oriented emphasized the technical or task aspects of the job. But we do know that employee-oriented behavior leads to higher productivity and satisfaction, to when people feel like there's a strong buy-in. So conclusion is that strongly favored leaders who were employee-oriented, and if supervisors were only production-oriented, it led to low group productivity and low worker satisfaction. Other studies out there, contingency theories, are the Fiedler's model, leader-member exchange, or LMX, or path goal theory. And I'll briefly touch on these. The Fiedler leadership model, it just said that effective group performance depends on the proper match between a leader's style and the degree to which a situation gives control. And it does a little worksheet. I won't have us do that. The least preferred, or LPC questionnaire, used to determine basic leadership style. And this really, what bothers me with Fiedler, it assumes that this style is fixed and that someone stays in the same spectrum and really never moves. And it breaks it down. Dimensions define the key situational factors. It says that it's either leader-member relations, task structure, or position power. And the most important of these is the leader-member relations. It's just the degree of confidence, trust, and respect that the subordinates have for their leaders. Again, this is a really complex model that's out there, and I'm not that. It's hard to understand. It's really not my favorite at all. But when we look at leader-member exchange, or the LMX theory, this just says that people are either in the in-group or the out-group. It tells us that leaders do differentiate among followers. So leaders pick favorites, just like everyone else does. And the disparities are far from random. We know that if you're in the in-group within an organization, you're going to have higher performance ratings. You're going to have lower turnover intentions. I mean, why would you leave if you're liked? Greater satisfaction with their superiors. Again, they're in the in-group, so of course they're going to like their superiors. And higher overall satisfaction than those that are in the out-group. So again, it just goes back to the schoolyard, and it goes back to middle school, that just like in every situation, that leaders do pick favorites. And again, you have the in-group, you have the out-group. It's much better to be in the in-group than it is in the out-group. If you're in the in-group, you rock, you have everything in your favor. If you're in the out-group, not so much. This just kind of shows you a chart of that. Again, it's pretty complex, so I won't go out of that, but you can see there's the out groups, and they have formal relationship. But if you're in the in group, you have higher interactions, you have higher trust, higher compatibility. So you're better off being in the in group, is all that this says. Path goal theory. It's a leader's job to provide followers with information, support, and other resources necessary for them to achieve their goals. There's 4 leader behaviors. There's a directive leader, a supportive leader, a participative leader, and then an achievement-oriented leader. We know that if you fall into the directive leader, that's the person that lets their workers know what's expected of them. Supportive leader is that friendly leader. A participative leader consults with their employees, and then the achievement-oriented leader sets challenging goals. So there are, again, several different type of leadership positions, and these are just some of the theories that are out there. I'm going to stop here because I'm going to create a new slide on charismatic leaders and talk about that and give you information of what it includes to be a charismatic leader.